Welcome to the Lovecraft Easing podcast special episode. We've got our usual couple of our usual podcast panelists with us, Matt Carpenter and Rick Lay, and then we've got three guests with us. Four, sorry. I wasn't going to do an episode this weekend, and then Alicia, you had emailed me about Kickstarter that you're doing. The Back to OMNIPARK horror anthology, and it's got about not quite 2 weeks left, 12 or 13 days left, so I thought we better get this in while we could.
I really appreciate that.
That's why we're here. Yeah, no problem. Laird's got a story. Gwendolyn Kiste.
Kiste.
Sorry.
Kiste.
I
You
do
get it
this
like half
every
the
time, don't I? Sorry, I'm an old man. You know how that is. Gwendolyn Kiste and John Palisano, if I'm saying your last name right. And who else is in the anthology? And then we'll do introductions.
There are quite a few authors. We have Jonathan Mayberry and Haley Piper, Christy DeMeester, AC Weiss, and we have Brad Kelly is a returning author, and Maxwell Ian Gold, he's a returning author. And then we also have another John. We have John Willison, and we have, let's see, Brad Kelly. Apologize if I'm missing anyone, but
Oh, that's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Pretty big list of authors. It'll
Yeah.
probably be 17 stories, maybe bigger. If we reach the stretch goal, then we'll have an open call for all authors who will have a chance to submit their own OMNIPARK stories and try to get into the book.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's great.
Yeah.
Matt, you have a prize today or no?
Yes, I do. Hello, I'm Matt Carpenter. So I've got this single issue comic of Galarian, which is in the White Ash world, which is a secret land of elves and dwarves living in a Pennsylvania mining community. This is kind of a side off the main story, but if you want to win this, the art is very good, rather adult themes. Send an email to easyprizes@gmail.com and put Galarian in the subject heading. We'll draw a winner randomly in about 6 weeks, and who knows, it could be you.
Awesome.
Oh, I know who it's not going to be. You, because your wife told you to get rid of all that stuff.
I'm just going to take away my video so I can cry.
All right, you do that. Hey, Rick, how are you feeling today?
Okay, I got a similar ultimatum from my wife, as you know.
Yes, I do. Well, you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Rick Lay, writer and pulp magazine collector.
And I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft Easing. Alicia Hilton.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I'm not doing so great with names today. I apologize. You're one of the editors of Back to OMNIPARK.
I am,
absolutely.
anthology. I am one of the editors. Ben Thomas is the other editor.
And we'll get into this in a minute. But you had a story in the last one. You weren't an editor, but you had a story in it, and now you're editing the second one.
Yes. And for those of viewers who are not familiar, this is the previous book, Tales from OMNIPARK, and you do not have to read Tales from OMNIPARK to enjoy Back to OMNIPARK. Back to OMNIPARK being a prequel that takes place at the very beginning of the park's history, when all the nightmares are just starting to begin.
Gwendolyn.
I'm just introducing myself. Is that all? I
Yes.
feel like I've been suddenly put on
Yes,
the
ma'am.
spot.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay. Hello, I'm Gwendolyn Kiste. I am very excited to be one of the authors of Back to OMNIPARK, and a few of my books, Reluctant Immortals. I was on like last year to talk about that. The Rust Maidens. Yeah, those are, horror writer, just hanging out. Happy to be here.
Laird, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, Laird Barron. I write crime, horror, mystery. I do have a little thing out, Coleridge novella, The Wind Began to Howl, brought out by Bad Hand Books, and very happy to be here and to take part in the anthology.
Yeah, this is the fourth Coleridge book. For those who know about Isaiah Coleridge, if you haven't picked up the fourth book, you can. If you haven't read the first three books, pick them up, but you don't necessarily have to enjoy the fourth book. So yeah. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm John Palisano, author. I have a new piece out called Hellhole in the Try Not to Die series. Again, I'm really excited about our explorations into OMNIPARK and what we found, and I'm very much looking forward to what everybody else has unearthed about this old amusement park.
Thanks. So, Alicia, will you paint me a picture of OMNIPARK? And I also want to know what was your motivation? You were a writer last time, and you're an editor in this for the second book. So I'm assuming it really spoke to you.
It did indeed, and I have a personal connection to OMNIPARK, which I will mention. So
Okay.
OMNIPARK was a theme park in Odessa, Texas, and it was started by Dr. Dalton Teague, and I happened to meet him once. My great uncle, Elsner Hilton, was a world traveler, and he met Dalton. They became friends, and he later became a technosopher. I have a few photos to show you. So this is my great uncle. That is him traveling to Shanghai from Japan. Here's him with elephants. So he was an engineer, and he was someone who knew Dalton from traveling and unearthed mysteries himself when he was overseas in Asia and in South America. And as far as my connection with being an editor, I've edited 2 other anthologies before this, and I felt so passionately about the project, I wanted to bring in new authors to tell new stories about the mysteries that have been unearthed and the nightmares. I wanted to bring them to light and show them to people and help authors make their stories the best they could be.
I'm
I
sorry, I
can't hear you,
muted
Emma.
myself. Yeah, I muted
There.
myself. This is not just for you, but to anyone else who wants to answer it as well. Can you tell me what the park was like? You can paint me a picture of what it actually was.
Well, I can answer that if you like. It's
Sure.
was a spread out over, 100 acres. It was a big place, and similar along the lines of Epcot Center, where instead of, each realm was a different world. And you could enter the realm through various rides and other attractions, and you would meet emissaries from those realms, the navigators or other people who worked in the realms, and you would essentially explore other dimensions. And one of the reasons that OMNIPARK was in Odessa, Texas, is that it is a very special place, not just because you could buy a lot of land there when Dalton started the park and get it for cheap because of real estate prices, but because it's really was a liminal space. And so the divisions between our world and other worlds were very thin.
Give me an example of a few of the worlds. I mean, you don't have to talk about
Okay,
all of them, but
sure. You have the realm of the stars, and you have the realm of life, the realm of the deep, which involves water, the ocean, and the realm of man, which is essentially the history of humans as, an organism as a species. And so the realm of life, I think that's Gwendolyn's story. We have the Laird's story with Nebula Quest, and that's the realm of the stars. The realm of the particle has to deal with physics, atoms. And then we have the realm of dream, which was a realm that never actually got built, but it was contemplated, but it was decided that it was too dangerous to finish building it. And the realm of mind, which is, some people think, well, is that actually the realm of dream, or is it something else? That's kind of a mystery you would have to uncover by reading the book. And the realm of the cell. So you have 7 realms. Each
Right.
was essentially a different section of the theme park. And the Omnicolor fountain was the center, which is sort of the hub that everything revolved around.
So, for example, I'm pulling up the wiki on this. The realm of the stars says
Yes.
transported guests to a futuristic space station in which every detail mimicked the lifestyle of a near future astronaut. As guests explored this astronomical world, the picture that emerged was one of a cosmos in ongoing flux. So I, like I said before we started recording, the first OMNIPARK anthology flew under my radar. I didn't know about it until you emailed me recently. So I haven't had a chance to read it. And obviously the second book hasn't been published yet. Was it did you select a realm for various authors, or did you say, you know, here are the realms and pick one that you'd be interested in writing about?
I let the authors choose their own realms. You know,
Okay.
with some authors, we had dialogue by text, email, talking about what they wanted to write about. And so
Sure.
some people wanted more prompts from me, and I gave story, you know, suggestions and talked to them about locations. And I didn't want too many authors to take a certain realm, you know, like Realm of the Stars was popular. A bunch of people
Sure.
wanted that. So after I had a certain number of stories, I said, okay, you can't choose this realm because so-and-so has already picked it. But people had a lot of freedom to select the realm that connected with them. And some people, you know, they connected on a personal level. They knew someone who had an experience, they heard about it. And so they really wanted to talk about a certain realm. And then some of the stories don't involve a specific single realm. They either cover multiple realms. John's story is one of those that, you know, is above and beyond. So it's above the realms and covers multiple realms. And then Haley Piper's story, for instance, was set during the construction period, and it's underneath OMNIPARK. So strange things that happen out down in the hole underneath OMNIPARK.
Yeah. When you're, just because my son has played Minecraft almost since he could walk, these different realms make me think of different biomes in Minecraft, you know. Let's talk to the three authors who were able to be here today. Gwendolyn, which realm did you write about?
So I wrote about the realm of life. It's got like a lot of like prehistoric plants and animals, and like this like cool little ride that goes through all of that. So mainly it's set a lot at the Dragonfly Dining Terrace. That the actual story title is How to Survive a Birthday Party at the Dragonfly Dining Terrace. I had it written down because I always have long story titles and like I sometimes get them wrong. And so, yeah, so it's about one of the workers and a couple of her friends that work in the park. And, you know, they're really wanting to kind of get out there. They've been, you know, in the area for a long time, and they know kind of weird things might be going on at the park. And so, yeah, also I like dragonflies, I like insects. And so I thought it was neat that this realm had like a lot of insects in it, because insects are creepy and cool, and dragonflies are so pretty. So yeah, creepy and pretty.
Creepy and pretty, especially creepy when the dragonflies are huge.
Yeah. For the audience, the wiki says the realm of life introduced guests to the primordial forests of the Earth's ancient evolutionary past. So that gives you some idea. Laird, which one did you write about? What was your story?
I set my story in the realm of stars. But because these were stories about the kind of the prequel to the first book, I think it focuses a lot on sort of the weeks and months before the place actually opened. It was under construction for a while, and so I set my story kind of before it opens, but they're still like they're doing their last rehearsals. And I was really intrigued by the Nebula Quest ride and all the rumors around that. So I created a story about a stage actor who, and this kind of mimics stuff that actually happened, but I just had to extrapolate from my story, because the details are sketchy in reality. But it was about a stage actor who answers an audition for a narrator guy, or a guide,
Right.
kind of a slash narrator, navigator, and what she goes through, and also maybe some connections she didn't realize she had to the part.
Well, John, I want to ask you the same question, and then I've got a follow up for all three of you. Which realm did you write about, John?
Well, Alicia hinted that Above and Beyond actually touched almost all the realms.
Right.
And I was really interested in an early technosopher named Catherine Kelly. And Catherine Kelly kind of went under the radar, and her work was kind of squashed, very similar to the way Mallory O'Meara's book about Millicent Patrick. Kind of all that kind of happened at that time of history with creative women. And she was developing a ride that would actually go through several of the different realms and gather energies that would actually bring the riders to a secret kind of like Easter egg ride called Above and Beyond. But in the process, they found out that there was a lot more going on there that they were not expecting, especially in regards to the fire berries that they were thinking they were going to use as a main drink attraction. But that's a whole nother story. So that's kind of like what Above and Beyond is about. And interestingly enough, as I was researching about her, somebody sent me this cross that was supposedly from her office back in the day, and it's been cleaned up and it looks really nice now. But you could see there's these little holes in there too that had some significance to her where she was hiding things. So very interesting person. If you can look up Catherine Kelly, I urge you to. Interesting.
For all three of you, and Alicia, you can answer this too, I'm sure, but were you made aware of OMNIPARK because you read the first volume, or were you made aware of it when you were asked to write a story? How did this come about for you guys?
I was made aware of it through the anthology, but once it kind of triggered something, I've never been there, but the time that it was started, and even when it till it closed, I was pretty much well, actually, I guess it closed in 2002, but for most of its run, I was living in Alaska and didn't get out much. But I have relatives from Oklahoma and all over Texas in the Panhandle. But some of my relatives on the Oklahoma, more distant relatives on the Oklahoma and Texas side, were in the oil business, so they talked about the place. But it's one of those things, I've heard it in passing, but never really given it much thought because I wasn't directly involved. But I guess that it was a summer vacation spot for some of my relatives.
Yeah, so it opened in 74. So it's open all through the 70s, 80s, 90s, first part of the aughts.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Gwendolyn?
Yeah, I'd heard of it through the first anthology and then learned more about it when Alicia reached out and invited me to be part of the project. And I've always been fascinated by theme parks and theme park histories. And it's just like this, Americana here in the country. Like, it's just so interesting to me. And like, it's got such a blend of fun and kitsch, but also kind of like capitalism. So there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad. I like theme parks, but they're often very hot and crowded. And like we were saying before we started, you have to wait in line for a long time. So there's a kind of like existential horror about theme parks while they're also fun. So it's like that just all appealed to me. And I loved the rich history of the park. And I love, like, you're looking at the wiki and how detailed it is. And you could just get lost in it. And I just spent, several days just researching about it. And it was just so much fun. I was just so excited to be part of this. Yeah.
It's just this own entity or universe to itself, where there's restaurants and rides and all kinds of things. So, John.
I think several years ago, my son is really interested in theme parks, and specifically haunted theme parks and all the strange things that happens in them, and also like abandoned attractions is a big fascination for us. So we've been doing a lot of research, and I did a lot of posting online, like, hey, what have you ever heard of this strange ride or this strange, amusement park story of this ghost that's on, like the Pirates of the Caribbean or something. And I think Alicia may have seen those kinds of posts and thought that I might be a good fit to check this world out. And that's how I think I came to the project. If memory serves, but it's a really interesting, it's an interesting world for sure, with all the different things. And there's lots of really cool abandoned theme parks you can actually go and visit. There's one up in Connecticut, upstate, and they're really creepy. So
yeah,
very cool kind of subworld if you're into that sort of thing.
There is just something about abandoned theme parks that got a really creepy vibe. So, Besides, that's where the Joker likes to hole up. We all know that. Abandoned theme parks. How many authors that were in the first one, Alicia, are in the second one? Any, or did you?
There are 5 returning authors, Brian Evanson, and I believe that his story in the first one was reprinted in Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year. So Brian Evanson is back, and then Maxwell Gold is someone who's another returning author. He has a poem in this anthology, and Brad Kelly, and then Jesse Bullington and Brent Winter. They're co-authors of a series of sort of stories vignettes. So they have multiple pieces that are shorter that are together. So we have 5 returning authors and then 9 new authors that I brought in, and hopefully we'll have more stories from the open submission call, like I said, if we reach the stretch goal.
Give me kind of a taste of maybe just 1 or 2 of the other stories by authors who aren't here.
Okay, sure. We have Brian Evanson's story is really interesting and creepy. It's about the realm between the realms, which was a VIP area in OMNIPARK where, you know, the big shots, the important peoplers, top scientists, the adults who want to impress, you know, various big shots would go. And it was a sort of a secret type realm that obviously not everyone was invited to. And it, you know, had various attractions. And Brian's story is quite terrifying about what would happen to some of these visitors when they enter the realm between the realms. So that's one of the stories. And I mentioned Haley Piper's story is during the construction period. Kiste DeMeester's story is a really interesting, and it's one of the questions that people ask about OMNIPARK is, do supernatural things occur there or do they not? And so Kriste's story is set in the haunted mansion. There's a haunted mansion at OMNIPARK. And so the question is this entity, and, you know, is it a ghost? Is it not a ghost? You know, what's real? And that story is quite interesting and terrified. It's also set during the early years, the construction period. So that's another interesting story. And then A.C. Weiss's story, the Technosopher's Ball, is a Realm of the Stars story, but very different from Laird's. And there's a big party scene, a big ball, and lots of unusual happenings and strange visitors, and, you know, quite a psychedelic, trippy, strange story. So those are a couple of the stories.
The first anthology dealt with stories set during the park's existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
The
this
first
one,
anthology was different from this new anthology in a couple of ways. One is the time period, whereas Back to OMNIPARK is a prequel. It's all set during the park's early days, except for some of the stories that involve time travel, where you're going forward and back. And obviously, you're going into the future, but most of the stories are still set during the early time. And another difference between the 2 anthologies is Back to OMNIPARK, the new anthology, is really a horror anthology. There are science fiction, fantasy elements, crime elements. So it is some weird fiction, but it's predominantly horror. Whereas the first anthology had more science fiction, more fantasy. Yes, there was horror, but it wasn't quite as pure of horror.
it's horror, but it does have, at least in your advertising on the Kickstarter, sort of, to me, of this pulp kind of vibe.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
government and exclamation points, government conspiracies, dimensional portals, a haunted house, sentient fungi,
Mhm,
time
yes.
travel, monsters, aliens. So quite a lot of choices for a writer to write about.
Exactly. And some of the stories involve more than one of those things, but
Right.
like sentient fungi is, I won't say who, but it's that involves a time travel story.
So to the writers here, what fascinates you about this theme in this park that made you want to write about it? Whoever wants to take that first.
I've always been, because of the nature of some of the stories that I'm attracted to in my own reading, but also the stuff that I write. Obviously, there's a espionage element to some of it, and a lot of my stories feature characters who intersect with the intelligence community, worldwide intelligence community. I love the X-Files. And so I like the conspiracy elements of the stories around the park, because they sort of encompass, no matter what people believe, whether there is or is not an occult or supernatural current running through the place, whether it's something to do with alien technology, whether it's just a pure horror component. There's kind of something for every kind of conspiracy theorist there. And so that was what really motivated me to take the approach that I did and to do a lot of reading on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
how
and
much-
one other aspect is because Alicia was talking about this earlier, is the fractured or segregated. In some ways, it's the park operates as a cohesive whole. Obviously, it all sort of intertwines. But you talked about biomes, and that there was different crews that worked on them. Different technosophers had areas of expertise. Each one was its own realm in not only in its aesthetic, but also sort of how the experience that it would deliver, but also the people who were involved. In some ways, they were isolated from one another. So that also leads into the whole, I mean, conspiracies breed where there's kind of cell-like activity and not everybody knows what everybody else is doing, or they have half glimpsed, there's half truths abounding. And so I found that it was like a breeding ground for conspiracies. No matter whether the result was that there was something mundane going on or whether something nefarious or sinister was happening, it wouldn't really matter, because the environment itself engendered conspiratorial theorizing.
Yeah. What about you guys, Gwendolyn, John?
So one of the things, like I said, I've always been fascinated by theme parks. I think that they're so interesting. But obviously, if you just want to write your own theme park, like, it's going to be very hard to do a short story about your own theme park and be able to have that kind of rich history. I feel like if you want, it's not usually something you're going to be able to cover in just one short story. And so when Alicia invited me into this, as part of like this shared world, it's exciting because so much of the background is already rich. It's already there. The other stories are going to get into it. The previous anthology got into it. The wiki gets into it. And so I felt like I got to, really explore the theme park in my own way without feeling like I had to go through every single place in the theme park. And I think that could be very hard to do in just a short story. I feel like that would be more a novella or a novel or several novels. And so that was so appealing to me, because it's like, I love theme parks. Like I said, I love the Americana of them. And it's something that I feel like I have written about, maybe carnivals before, or like, smaller places, but I was always very fascinated about writing, in this larger world, and being able to do that while being part of a bigger project was like really, really appealing to me and really exciting. So yeah. Thank you for inviting me, Alicia. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I love your story. All of the stories are fabulous.
What about you, John? What drew you to this?
I agree definitely with what Laird and Gwendolyn said. But also for me, a really fascinating aspect was the fact that the park is no more. And how did it go from being this huge thing with like something like 30,000 visitors a week or something, and now it's gone? Like, what happened in that process? What made it turn to nothing? And that's kind of a thing that's always kind of interested me. How do these big things suddenly go away? Like something like a Blockbuster's gone, and
Did
things that
Elon
seem
Musk buy
ubiquitous.
it?
What's that?
Did Elon Musk invest in it?
Not that I know of.
Going downhill. So yeah, for the three of you also, did it take a lot of research on your part? Before you got to where you had the feel of it, before you could write about it?
But it was fun research, right? Like, it's not, you say research. I think most research is fun as a writer. I enjoy the research process. But yeah, I mean, I felt like I really wanted to know the world. I wanted to know the world so that I could know which area that I even was, drawn to write more about. But it was also just that I wanted to get it right. I wanted to get, that there's such a great history behind it, and the wiki has so much information. I wanted to make sure that I was able to capture, that feel of it and do it justice and do the history of the park justice. So definitely, I know I spent at least a couple of days, just really looking through I think I looked through every page on the wiki. That was my goal, was to see every page and try to read everything that I could.
It's pretty
And
detailed.
so, yeah, it is. It's very detailed. And then I also went back to the first anthology and read those stories and really just wanted to be immersed in this world before I started writing in it. Yeah.
That's great. What about you guys? A lot of fun research.
Yeah, for me. Oh,
No, go ahead, John.
all right, cool. I think that for me, one of the hardest things to do was to kind of visualize the world. So I was really like looking at maps of Texas and looking at period pictures to try and just visualize what this place would be like, how it would feel, like how it would smell, and what it would be like to actually step there. What would you see if you looked around? And that was a challenge, for sure. And I know that Ben a few times said, hey, this road doesn't go quite there. So it was kind of interesting to kind of try to figure out like the three-dimensional mapping of what OMNIPARK and its surroundings, because my story also went into when they went home at night and things like that. So trying to figure all those mechanics out was really kind of an interesting and very, very creative process. So I really loved that kind of research.
I got some clarifications from Ben too, like, no, this isn't where this goes. This isn't where it goes. I also liked looking at period pictures as well. And I also looked at other theme parks from that era and kind of compared them and like, okay, well, what did Disney World or Disneyland look at this time? And how does that compare to how this is going to look in this specific theme park and in Texas, which is obviously a different landscape than either Florida or California. And so, yeah, that was definitely part of my process too.
Laird?
No, I concur with that. It was fun research. The wiki is really well detailed. The first anthology, I mean, all this stuff really lent itself to, so much material to draw from, and a lot of that heavy lifting had been done. I think I was sort of fortunate in being able to capture, having never been there, but being able to capture sort of the atmosphere of the place, partially because I grew up, in the 70s and was terrorized by Westworld, for example. And it seems that the designers of the place had drawn on, at least to some degree, film and literature that had existed, such as Westworld. I can't believe that they operate in a vacuum, right? So there was, when they're making aesthetic choices, that they had to be on their mind, at least Riley, or cynically. But also, as I said in a different interview, one of the technosophers, I think it was Greeley, was a big Roald Dahl fan and was taken with Gene Wilder's portrayal of Wonka, especially the tunnel ride, and which is one of the most dramatic, horrifying scenes for a kid, probably in my generation. So yeah, it's funny. It's just like, I kind of got what the place must have been like just from having grown up in the 70s and been interested. I don't think I was necessarily as fascinated with theme parks, but to some degree, they're inescapable, especially as a horror writer. They're sort of an inescapable part of your, the background, that when you're reading or when you're researching. I mean, the euthanasia coaster, I forget who designed that, but I mean, there's just so much, and as Mike was talking about, the favored layer of the Joker, that it really is. Theme parks, fun houses, things like that are definitely like this recurring element. And like I said, one of the greatest horror movies of all time is Westworld, which is, a dedicated Western theme park where nothing can go wrong, which was what it got me when I was a little kid. That was the advertisement for it. But those elements somehow had just sort of embedded themselves in my brain from childhood. And so it was really easy lifting to create a story for this setting.
I love that you brought up Westworld. And I also love that you call it a horror movie, because when I was growing up, everyone called it sci-fi, but it
Yeah.
always felt like, I mean, yes, it's sci-fi as well, but the horror was just so potent in that film. And
Absolutely.
I was thinking a little bit about Westworld whenever I was writing too, because it definitely left a mark as when I was a kid.
Yeah, I watched it when I don't think I saw it when it first came out, but I saw it in the early 70s. So I was probably 6 or 7 when I saw it. And Yul Brynner, I mean, Arnold's not nearly as scary as Terminator, and not to knock him, it was a great role, but Yul Brynner is terrifying as a Terminator, like basically an android with a grudge, looking for this guy, looking for this tourist.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
great.
It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. I need to rewatch that.
I rewatched it a few months ago, actually before I got really sick last year.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous. It's absolutely, I mean, it's, you know, it's dated and all that, but it's a really great horror. And I agree. It's definitely a horror movie in my book.
Yeah.
Speaking of film, I sincerely hope that some producer or director out there is inspired and makes a film about OmniPark, because there are so many different horrors to uncover. And then you have the science aspect, you have the fantasy aspect, and the political aspect and the crime aspect, because we have murder is occurring. You know, there's a lot to write about, and a lot of incredible visual aspects that could be captured on screen.
Well, if it went that way, I would think, just me, but I would think a Amazon or Netflix series
Mhm.
would have more room than a
Mhm.
movie
Yeah.
to
The
explore
series
it. Yeah,
would definitely have more room, because you could even make one episode about each of the stories.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Right. How many stories did you say approximately they have so far for back to OmniPark?
Well, it depends upon how you divide them up, but we have right now around 15, because some can be, considered one story or multiple stories, depending upon how you put them together. Like I said, the paired authors.
Right.
And if we reach the stretch goal, which is if the campaign earns at least 10,000, then we're going to have an open call for all authors. And depending upon how much money the Kickstarter raised, that impacts the pay rate for those open call authors, but people have a chance to submit their own stories to try to get in.
Right. So, but at the very least, sounds like we have 15 to 17
Yeah,
stories.
that is
That's a lot.
it's a big
Yeah.
book, because some
Yeah.
of the stories are more than 5,000 words long. It's a substantial book. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my last question, unless anyone else has a comment or a question, is is there going to be a Kindle edition of this one? Or
Yes.
okay.
Right now in the Kickstarter, you can order the ebook, you
Okay.
can order the paperback, you can order the hardback. We also have other OmniPark swag, including Tuckerizations, so you can have the opportunity
nice.
to actually become a character in a story and travel to the realm of the stars, for instance. So Tuckerizations are perks that are offered, and then there's a big art print poster of OmniPark, t-shirts, mega bundles. And for booksellers, we have retailer packages where you can get a discounted pack of multiple books, if you're a bookstore. So there's a lot of different choices.
Anyone else have a comment or question?
One thing I wanted to mention is the
Yes.
concept of truth and all of the rumors about OmniPark, because there have been many rumors over the years about conspiracies, cover-ups, crime. Are there really extraterrestrials? Was there really a ghost? And so what I would say is truth is a matter of perception. And, eyewitness accounts can be notoriously inaccurate, especially when someone is under the influence of medication or, some kind of drugs. And all three of the authors who have joined us today have medication or drugs as something that's a role in their stories. I wanted to know if they wanted to talk about that briefly.
What is she trying to say about you guys?
Everybody looks
Yeah.
at John.
All right, druggies, comments?
Drugs are
I'll-
very important.
Yes, sir. Depends on the
they're-
drug. Yes.
They're very important, just not for just medicinal purposes, but also for mind expansion. And I think a lot of the technosophers at that point were using them and experimenting with them to try and bring their best A game to theme park design and ride design, and going beyond, kind of like the Beatles were doing with Sgt. Pepper's. They were influenced by that as well. So it's interesting, and I think it's still to this day, drugs are widely used at amusement parks, but I
Well,
don't
you
know
know,
if
not
it's for
just
the same reasons.
not just creators, but one of my heroes is Carl Sagan, and he smoked a lot of marijuana. He said it freed up his mind to
Wow,
think, you know. So
did not know that, but
he'd be happy to find that it's becoming more and more legal in the United States. So
Well, when
anything
I-
else? Anything
I was
else? Yeah,
studying-
Matt.
When I was studying pharmacology, the lecturers were very interesting, and they said it has been since the dawn of humanity, people have been using mind altering drugs. You know, who knows what they picked in the forest, who picked the first peyote button. I personally invented fermentation when I was 8 or 9,
Did you?
and I collected a
Well,
big
you're old enough.
Well, I collected a big jar of mulberries and I put them in a big pickle jar and I closed it and I put it down in my basement. And when I
This
went
is a
down,
Ray
I forgot about
Bradbury
it.
story waiting to happen.
I waited a couple months. I mean, I forgot about it. I came down and it was like, there's this dark liquid in there that was kind of bubbling. And I thought, this is really cool. I'll just see what happens. And then my mom found a jar. But
And drank it.
he could have. But you know, the point is fermentation is not that hard.
Yeah.
So they probably invented fermentation whenever they invented like a pot or gourd to store berries in.
You know, you can make every drug illegal. You can make alcohol illegal during Prohibition. People are still going to find a way to reach some altered state. If they have nothing else, they're going to go out in the front lawns and spin around in a chair until they get dizzy.
I think it's just natural for monkeys to do this, you know,
Yeah.
even like catnip.
That's funny. I watched a interview with Barack Obama last week, and he had a lot of things to say, but one of the things that he said was, as humans, we're a bunch of chumps with guns. So, anything else, guys? Laird, John, anyone?
I have something else I'd like to share with everybody.
Absolutely.
So while we were doing this interview, I'm kind of been getting into like ghost hunting. So I had my EMF meter going the entire interview to see, like, I don't know if these things work through the internet or not, but I wanted to see like if anybody like had more energy or less while we were doing it. And probably the person with the most ghosts, if that's what we're measuring here, would be Laird. No surprise there. Followed by Gwendolyn. So very interesting. So maybe there is some supernatural stuff to all this. Who knows?
Never
I
know.
love that's amazing. I'm jealous though that Laird had more ghosts than me.
I am too.
You've got work to do.
I have seen a ghost for real when I was a kid. I
Really?
grew up in a haunted house.
Ooh.
So Rick, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was remembering old parks from my youth that people probably haven't heard about. From 1960 to 1964, there was a place in the Bronx called Freedom Land, which was set up as a rival to Disneyland. It didn't last long. And it had the first horror ride ever went on an amusement park. It had a area, the park was divided into areas based on regions, the cities of the United States. So there was Chicago, where you could go on a Chicago fire ride, you had an earthquake ride in the San Francisco area of the park. There was one area called the Old Pacific Southwest, where they have a mine, and I just thought we're going to go in and see miners. I went to ride, and it had every monster from that it was associated with a mine in the 1950s. Cavemen, giant insects, bats, and somehow a three-headed dragon.
Oh, wow. All right. Anyone else? So, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your co-editor before we close?
Tell me about Ben.
Yeah, yeah.
Ben Thomas is from Texas. He is the owner of House Blackwood Publishing, and he is the person who edited and published the first OMNIPARK book, Tales from OMNIPARK, and he's published other anthologies and edited them as well.
What part of Texas does he live in?
in the Austin area.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Austin is not really in Texas.
Well,
I
guess maybe people used to think it was more in Texas. It's
It's-
now become more of an anomaly.
it's a joke.
Yeah.
It is an anomaly in Texas. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a nice town,
Mhm.
nice area. All right. So I'm going to have a link in the show notes, Alicia, to the Kickstarter.
Thank you.
And if you want, to the first book. But yeah, I mean, it's 13 days left and it's about not quite 3/5 of the way there,
Mhm.
if memory serves. So, everyone listening, help us to make this anthology happen. You get another Laird story, Gwen, John story, a lot of other stories, Brian Evanson,
Yeah.
and a lot more. So yeah, thanks. Anything that you want to get out there that I've maybe didn't know to ask, Alicia?
I don't think so. I really appreciate you bringing us on the podcast and
Sure.
talking about Back to OMNIPARK. And there's a lot more information on the Kickstarter, including information about all of the different realms. And so for people who are curious, they can learn more about the book and they can learn more about the different, perk opportunities, including the Tuckerizations.
Yeah, you can Google Kickstarter and then Back to OMNIPARK, with 2 is just a numeral.
It's
Two.
a numeral year.
It's a
That's
numeral
right.
tool, and OMNIPARK is one word. So Google Kickstarter and Back to OMNIPARK, or as I said, I'll have the link in the show notes.
Mm.
So whether you're on YouTube or listening somewhere else. So yeah, thanks, Alicia.
Thank you so much.
It's a really interesting, sounds like a really interesting anthology. Like I said, I missed the first one, but I'm going to rectify that. So yeah.
Excellent.
So thanks. Matt and Rick and I have a few more things to talk about.
Mhm.
So you guys are just welcome to drop out whenever you want, or you can stay. Doesn't matter. So, but yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah, good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. John, it's good to see you too. Laird.
You too. Thanks, Mike.
Can't wait to read the book.
It's really good to see
Yeah.
you guys.
All right.
Thank you. It's good to see
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your holiday weekend if you're in America. So
You too.
have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. So, hey, Laird, you gonna stick around?
I'm gonna stick around for a few minutes.
You can listen to me, bitch.
No, I
Yeah,
just,
that's exactly what we're gonna
it's
do.
just good to see everybody. It's the first time I'd met Gwendolyn and John, so I think I may have met John years and years ago, but I'd never met Gwendolyn, so it's really nice
Gwendolyn
to.
is awesome.
Yeah, she is.
So cool.
Have you read her story, Laird? The Man in the Ambry?
No, I read a couple of her other stories though, really talented.
That just, I mean, all of her stories are great, but that one just really sticks out in my mind. I forget which collection it's in, but yeah, check it out.
I should have asked, where does she live? Because I know that the
New
editor's in
England, I
Texas.
think.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
New England.
Upper East Coast is where I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you, I was going to say, I think she's an East Coaster. I'm an East Coaster now, so we're fellow East Coasters. But like I said, I'd met John. I want to say like World Stoker, World Horror, maybe back in the aughts or something. But I've talked to him a bit before on the internet, but it's the first time I've ever seen Gwendolyn. So, or I met Alicia too for the first time.
Yeah. Okay, I thought so. The Man in the Ambry, AMBRY. If you Google that, then looks like somebody did a reading of it
Oh.
at a place called the Wicked Library. As I said, I don't know which anthology it's in, but it is really worth checking that story out.
All right.
So I got a story to tell you guys. Danielle did a continuing ed for AP this past week, Monday through Thursday. So they paid for a hotel. It's in Southwest Fort Worth, which is about a good 90 minutes from where we live. And so we were staying there, and Danielle told me on the last day driving home, she said, this morning something really weird happened. She goes, this guy, one of the other teachers, we were on a break and we were all on our computers, and somehow the subject of horror came up. I think Danielle said she was going to do a horror thing in the classroom this year. That's how it was. And, she mentioned me, and she said, I was mentioning, serial killers and murderers. And my husband's like, do a different kind of horror. And this guy's like, there were several people around. He's like, yeah, I like horror too. She goes, oh, well, my husband's weird. He's into that weird fiction and Lovecraftian stuff. And he got real quiet. And he goes, oh, really? He turns his laptop around, and his background was something about the Miskatonic University,
Mhm.
So so then she goes, yeah, my husband had a magazine and he does a podcast, around that topic and similar topics. And so then he just went nuts. He's like, what's your husband's name? She goes, Mike Davis. He goes, oh, I watched that or listened to it all the time. And there was another teacher there who he had made apparently listen to a couple of episodes too. She didn't seem to be, Danielle said she didn't seem to be quite as enamored as he was. So anyway, shout out to Patrick McGee.
Yes, he made me watch this and then the date ended.
Yes, something like that. So anyway, thanks, Patrick. You made my day when I heard about this. What is it you want to bitch about?
Okay, so I want to go
Hold
back
on.
in time, like 10 years. Sandy Peterson, who everyone knows is very famous for developing the playing system for the Call of Cthulhu, which
Really worse.
by any measure has been an immensely successful RPG system. And Sandy is a game designer, a game creator, and he created this new game called Cthulhu Wars, which really, when you looked at the mock-ups when they were first doing this, they had these astonishing figurines that, like, face it, I'm just using them to like play with. It's like the guy in Firefly with, I'm having these monsters talk to each other. Okay, well, never mind. Anyway,
No idea what you're talking about.
so, well, at any rate, he created this game called Cthulhu Wars, and he had a Kickstarter, and it was by any measure unbelievably successful. And so whatever plans he had, he sort of jettisoned them, and he created a company called Peterson Games to promote this project and other projects that he has had. And for about 6 years, he was amazingly successful. And then it's like the bottom has fallen out. I'm not sure exactly why. They haven't been completely forthcoming or revealed all information on their updates and whatever. But maybe it had to do with the pandemic and the fact that all their production was in China. I mean, that is perfectly possible. But I got the last couple of campaigns were roughly 2019. On my doorstep, there showed up today the supplement called the Demon Sultan, which I had mostly forgotten about, but these figurines are just freaking amazing.
Yeah, they really are.
They're really just, it's like, who cares about the game? I mean, I can have this chasing like little cockroaches in a box.
Was that the Demon Sultan alone, or you got the?
I got all the other stuff with it, but I didn't.
okay.
It's all downstairs, hiding it from my wife, kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway, when it showed up on my doorstep, I was pleasantly surprised. But there also showed up an email in my box because there's another campaign called Onslaught 3, which hasn't shipped yet. It turns out my product with a lot of others are sitting on a pallet somewhere in China. And now they say we have to send money to get the pallet shipped. And until the money has arrived in their office that would cover the cost of shipping this pallet to the US, it's just going to sit there. And they would like everyone to please send $55. Okay.
But you've already paid for the Kickstarter.
This got me thinking. Okay, so I went back. There have been 7 Kickstarters for Cthulhu Wars, starting in 2013 through 2019. 3 of them were for relatively minor stuff. There's an additional Kickstarter for an art book by Richard Luong, who designed the figurines, but that's completely separate, so I'm not going to put it in here. But going back, the total pledges, I don't know about collections, but the total pledges for all 7 Kickstarters was $4,195,000+ dollars. I looked back at my pledge manager for Onslaught 3, which was from about 2017, and I had already paid $38 for shipping. Now, the products are fabulous. In the interim, around that time, he did these role-playing game supplements
Right.
where he
Yeah,
took
I've got
Cthulhu
that.
Mythos this is for Pathfinder, and there's one for 5e. These are magnificent books, and like the figurines are magnificent. These products are just incredible. He
Well,
raised over
Sandy,
raised close to over $400,000 for these books. So these Kickstarters have been successful,
oh,
but now he's being excoriated online because of the lack of fulfillment of Onslaught 3. It's been 4 or 5 years now, that it hasn't been produced.
well, first of all, Sandy is a genius. Really nice guy. I don't know, is he in charge of this part of it or not? Who knows?
Well, the thing is, it's Peterson Games.
Good point.
He used to have, I don't know, half a dozen employees. It's probably just down to him and the shipping manager, I think. I don't know that there's any money in the company at all. For a while, he had subscription services where you could subscribe and you'd get a book, which is one of those hardcover Dungeons and Dragons type supplement, but for Cthulhu Mythos using his supplements. And then those stopped also. So right now, I don't know that there's any kind of active company, except he's trying to finally zero out this Kickstarter so he can do something else or start fresh or what. I've not spoken to the man, but I know Rick and I had both been sort of heavily invested, as it were, into the Cthulhu Wars game, getting all these figurines and stuff. They're really
Right.
nice, but it's been many years now, and now I have to pay an additional $55, and that's just kind of sticking in my craw.
Yeah.
You're saying there's a lot of negative comments online, more or less what you're saying here.
Yeah, a lot of people are more use more flowery language than I do. So.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, what about you?
Here's one thing.
Yeah.
Onslaught 3 was a previous Kickstarter. I have Onslaught 3. That's the one with the underground civilization.
Maybe I do too. I don't know.
You probably have that.
Then I don't know what this $55 is for.
Right. Well, I mean, I know you can, every time you had a new Kickstarter, you could buy some from the previous Kickstarter. Like if you didn't get Ramsey Campbell's
Right.
in the second Onslaught, you got it in the third.
Well, I found one of the comments on Reddit. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I'm gonna have to look through my stuff downstairs. Like it's not on display or anything. Maybe I already got it, and maybe they sent me this item from the Demon Sultan campaign without realizing I hadn't paid the extra $55. I don't know.
Well, no, because here's a comment I just read within the last month on Reddit. This is insane. This is insane Kickstarter behavior. Cthulhu Wars has added each shipping pallet as a product to their store, and you can buy that pallet's shipping to get your product faster. Are they telling you won't get the product if you don't ship in the 55, or you'll get it faster? I'm not sure.
I didn't read it in any kind of detailed way because I'm trying to decide if I want to spend $55 more.
I'm very confused by the way it was worded. I try to read it too.
Well, the bottom line is if you give to a Kickstarter a certain amount for a certain tier level, that's it. They don't get to add more fees later.
I can see, everybody who does a Kickstarter, they'll make a mistake here or there. They'll
Oh,
underestimate,
absolutely.
or they run out of money. I've had a couple projects just bottom out underneath me and I never got anything. And I can see where the pandemic really, since he was so heavily dependent upon China for his production, I can see where the production and the shipment would all be screwed for years. Like we're still digging out, right?
Yeah. We are.
So in that sense, I can see that the shipping and production costs overruns could have been ridiculous, but I also suspect what happened is they probably were living pretty high for a couple years before they realized what was happening. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't want to. That
Who
might be
knows, but you're
fair.
right. I am seeing a lot of people, basically what they're saying in so many words is, I've already given to this Kickstarter. I should be receiving what I paid for.
Now,
So yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, the best that we can do as a podcast is basically say, we don't know what's going on, but this doesn't look right. And maybe don't give to any more Peterson Games Kickstarters until you get this figured out.
now, what's outstanding is the following. They had the Cataclysm Kickstarter, which was Cat Gods and Cat from Other Planets, basically.
That was the Bubastis faction.
That is the glasses faction. They have an Others faction, and I think you get a Super Shuggoth, and you get some albino penguins or something. It's pretty, compared to some of the earlier installments, these were pretty short.
Well,
And they came back with a Dunwich horror one, where you get Wilbur Whately and all his relatives.
Yeah.
Including Alex Sosa. And that was originally to take care of the shipping problem. And what they did was, you could order this as an add-on, but you have to buy a lot of gift certificates to make up for it. So you were in fact funding the shipping.
well, I received an email yesterday from someone, one of my advice in the Kickstarter that they had funded. And, you know, in light of what's going on with Cthulhu Wars, you know, what did I think? And my answer was, it's day and night. It's not the same thing. I'm not going to name names, but I said, basically, you know, as long as you remain in communication with the people who have given funds to you in a Kickstarter, they're usually pretty understanding. If there's a delay, you know, you email them and say, there's a delay and this is why, but we're very much on it. People are very forgiving as long as you stay in communication with them. But it's when you don't that they start to get upset and bitter, and then you see comments all over the web. So I don't know what happened exactly, but it doesn't sound right to me. And, you know, I wish all the luck in the world to Peterson Games and Sandy Peterson. He's, like I said, he's a genius and a hell of a nice guy, but, you know, I don't know. If you pay for a Kickstarter, you need to get what you paid for. That's all there is to it.
And also how they're asking you to pay for this stuff. It's very confusing. There were different containers that are different prices. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't like I got a simple thing that said, you need to give us $55.
Yeah, so it's a very confusing communication.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying more than I should.
Well, no, that's the other thing about communicating with your Kickstarter people is you need to be concise.
Yeah.
And basically, when you run a Kickstarter, you basically got this little miniature business, right?
Right.
Maybe it's a one-time miniature business, but it's still a business. And if you ask such and such for this tier, for this product, and they give it, then as a business, if unexpected costs come up, that's not on the buyer. That's not on the donator to the Kickstarter. That's on the person who owns the business, which is you, the person running the Kickstarter. So I guess that's all I have to say. I don't want to beat it into the ground, but
No, it's hard to know what to do because
yeah,
if he ain't got the money, then the stuff is just going to sit over there and rot or be gone, and then you won't get your product at all. And if you're really enamored of the product, that it makes it tough.
what'd you say? 4.1 million? How much of that was you?
I don't know. I'm
Half?
still 0.1. I honestly don't know what I have not received.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm missing, to be honest.
Yeah.
And like I said, the communication has to be concise. Tell you what you have, what you don't have.
Now, this might be, the recommendation here might be, if you go to Kickstarter, go with Simon, which does that that Kickstarter for, I think it's Cthulhu. It's Cthulhu, Dreams and Ray Egg or something.
Okay.
I got the first group, and they just came out with the second group, which hadn't shipped yet. But they did every conceivable figure. They even outdid Sandy.
Yeah.
Nug and Yeb. Yeah, they got the unnameable.
I actually, this actually has done me in as far as games go, though. I'm not
Okay.
buying any more gaming products like this.
Yeah, that's your wife talking.
Yes, it is.
I had come to that conclusion too.
Well, there's really not much accountability with Kickstarter, but the accountability to me is your reputation.
Right, and that it's a shame to see the online tirades, because like it's a really cool product and it's a fun game to play.
Yeah. So next topic, and we're not going to be very much longer because I wasn't going to do a show today anyway, but here's a Disney Warner Brothers failures signal the end of the theater era. Movie theaters had a nice run, but there's nothing like AMC or Cinemark can do to bring back 2018, and don't blame COVID. I mean, do you guys think that movie theaters are going to go the way of drive-in theaters and video stores, that they'll still be out there, but they'll be way more rare?
I don't know. I think every movie that I have been to in the last 4 or 5 years or whatever,
Mhm.
it's not, there've been some theaters that have had what looked like a healthy number of people in it, maybe 50 or 80 or who knows, even 100. A lot of times it's I'm in the theater with my family or whatever with 6 or 8 other people.
Yeah.
It's so I've not understood for years how this makes money unless this is just an avenue and they make their money off their online rentals or toys and products like that. I don't see
Well,
how it can stay open, but the
yeah.
ones that seem to be doing a little bit better are ones that charge an upscale ticket and then sell you drinks and pizza while you're sitting at a little table area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. The ones that have upscaled, like the one in my small town, used to be this dinky theater. Now you go in, you're sitting in a recliner if you want to. There's a space for your drink. It's very, very comfortable. Not as comfortable as home, but still very comfortable. It's it's on the experience, not just the movie.
It just, then I get to wondering, like, it used to be box office was so huge
Yeah.
in terms of how the studios funded themselves or paid their execs or whatever. That must not be the case anymore.
Well,
It
they're
must
counting
be
in
that
streaming these days too.
or maybe that the theater experience is more an overseas thing now, like more in Asia than in the US. I don't have any kind of answers. I just don't see how these movie theaters are going to stay open with such sparse attendance.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Laird?
I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
The world's pretty volatile. I will say this though, as far as weakening the market, just from a viewer's perspective, I actually think streaming, not TV, but episodic, and in each episode is almost the quality, if not the quality of any film, is undermined the art form to some degree. I know that filmmakers that specialize in motion pictures would probably protest that, but I really do think it's hard. Like, I think prestige TV and prestige serials are really giving them a lot of competition for just from enjoyment from viewers. Not only are they convenient because they're streaming, but also a film does a specific thing, but what it can't do is go into a characterization or a setting or a theme nearly as deeply as an 8-episode
Yeah.
series when it's done correctly. Obviously, there's a lot of garbage, but sort of a lot of garbage movies. I really do think, though, that just from an aesthetic point of view, I used to want my stuff to be turned into, that was always the dream, right? Have a film made out of a story. These days, obviously that'd be great, but I'm more interested in having Coleridge or something like that, Jessica Mace, turned into not necessarily Netflix, but a streaming series, because you get a good director, good showrunner, great writing room, and then actors, and they will, over the course of one or more seasons, bring that to life in a way that a motion picture is incapable of.
So you raised a couple of really great points, and it makes me think of the Jack Reacher movies, Laird, as
Mhm.
opposed to the Jack Reacher Amazon Prime series. I don't know if you've had a chance to.
I've seen it. I've seen all of that. Yep.
Yeah, and to me, okay, the movies were okay, but as you say, the author has got to be really happy with the way that the Amazon Prime series, it starts with the first book and it's 8 to 10 episodes, and it really has time to spread its wings and get into all those details. The other thing I'll say is I was watching the Superman and Lois season 3, episode 13, which I think is the last episode of the season. And I won't give it away because it's actually a really good story and I don't want to spoil it. But as I'm watching, I was thinking, man, this is every bit that, I'm watching Superman fly around and fight and and everything, and his heat vision and so on and so forth. And I'm thinking, this is just as good as I would see in the theater. And then I hear all this, everyone's so excited about this new Superman for the movies. I don't get it. Why? The Superman Legacy movie, what's going to last 2 hours, right? Roughly, give or take. Here you've got the same character and you're getting him for 45 minutes. Even on a short season of 13 episodes, that's a hell of a lot more. So, I realize in a lot of ways it's apples and oranges, but here it's kind of apples and apples. It's real easy to just sit home.
Well,
I was
go
raised
ahead.
on a theater experience, when you were a kid,
Yeah.
like our mama give us a buck and go watch the double feature, down on the square. She'd expect us to be out of the house for 5 hours.
Yeah, she wanted to get rid of you.
Of course she did. It's like, but okay, so there's no quite experience like actually sitting in a theater and seeing a great movie on the big screen. One of
Yeah.
my greatest memories is when I took Isabel to San Francisco and we went and saw the re-release of Vertigo on the screen at the Castro in San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
That's really, it is an art for like watching the Seven Samurai in the theater is very different than seeing it on your TV, even these 55 inchers.
I used to, I've been self-employed a long time. Before I did this, I was in real estate. And so on a slow day, I'd go into a movie theater. I've been meaning to watch this movie, for example. I'd go into a movie theater and the middle of a hot Iowa summer day, everybody else is at work. And I'm the only one in the theater during the day. I mean, it might be full that night, but I watched The Bourne Identity, for example. I was the only one in there. And on this huge screen, and it is an experience. But then you cut to today, and I don't want to sound like an old man. We got these kids with their phones during the movie and talking,
Right.
and shining their iPhones and Androids.
I think actually it's a really good point Matt makes. I mean, that's
Yeah.
because if anything does keep the theater alive, it's not going to be. See, it used to be there was a dramatic distinction between Hulk, the TV serial, versus what you would expect to get from a motion picture. This is going to be, but it's going to be the Hulk, but it's going to be good.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case. That is no longer the case. As a matter of
Number one.
fact, there's going to be an argument to be made that an MCU TV series might be better written, especially if it was done by Noah Hawley and some people good writers in there, off-brand actors who can actually, you can kill them and go, oh well, they don't take over the production. But the bottom line though is that aesthetic experience may be what keeps in some form could be the one thing going for the theater experience, because he's right. Or you're right, Matt. The Seven Samurai is a different experience. I haven't seen on the big screen, but I've seen many movies of that ilk on both mediums, and there is something special about watching it on the big screen. The problem is, though, is that there's now a trade-off, and at one point the theaters had all the advantages, better production, it was going to be a beautiful experience, hopefully, and all this stuff, and now it's just like, yeah, but it'd be cooler on the big screen, and that's just not a big selling point for today's it doesn't matter if old fogies like us think, yeah, I'm going to go in the middle of the afternoon and watch it when there are no kids there, or there's no, maybe nobody else, to your point earlier, right?
Yeah.
But that's not a selling point for most people. And we're not talking about what aesthetically is better. We're just talking about, why are they going to live? And I think that on a functional level, TV writing is as good or better than any film writing, in general, than films being made. And
As
so
is
really
the production values.
Really, so what the production values are just as good. So what really really the only thing that films have going for them is it's like I saw the Dune preview the other day, and I'm like, yeah, I have to see that in the theater, because that's one of those. See, but now we're starting to think this way. It used to be I would go watch Steve Martin movies in the theater. I'd watch anything in the theater. Now I'm like, yeah, if I go to the theater, it's going to be for something that you won't get the same effect on a small screen.
Right, because
And
I've
that's
been dying to see the original 1978 Superman the movie in the theater
sure.
for
Yeah.
decades, and the theater in my town, I'm trying to get them to do it because sometimes they'll do older movies and they say send in requests. Well, they haven't honored my request yet, but yeah, you're right. It's that kind of movie, but your average movie, I can wait till it's in streaming.
Well, and that's right, and if old guys like us feel that way, and I grew up when going to the movies was like one of the biggest things that could happen to you, like oh my God, I should go watch a movie on screen. If we're jaded to the point where it's like, I watch this one, I'll save my 1 or 2 trips to the movie theater for this type of movie. Imagine what 20 somethings they're just like, why would why am I going to the theater to get? I'm spending as much going to the theater on one movie, even if you go by yourself, as you are your month Netflix. You could buy 2 months of, pay for 2 months of Netflix. I'm watching one movie. So
I hadn't thought about it in that way, but you're right. If older guys like us, if we're getting kind of, I don't want to go to the movies anymore, then surely kids who grew up with streaming, they're thinking that way even more.
If you didn't grow up with it as part of your culture, that going to the movie was an event, then
you went with your friends and
because
Now,
Matt's 100% correct. There's a lot of psychological elements to why it was a big deal, and maybe it continues to be a big deal to us, but it may be not the case with younger people.
And it doesn't happen often that Matt is 100% correct. So the last thing I'll say about that, you see movies coming to streaming, like for example, to Amazon faster and faster, but then you can rent it for $20. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Mm-hmm.
But at first glance, you're like, I'm not gonna rent a goddamn movie for $20. But actually you're paying way more than that to rent a movie when you go to the theater.
I rented Renfield for $20 to show for movie night.
Yeah.
We had 10 or 11 people watch it.
Right.
It was like it was a bargain. It was a big watch party with a lot of funny comments.
Right. And you're not paying for popcorn or anything else. So yeah. I don't know. Who knows? Like you said, Laird, none of us know what can happen, but it's kind of fun to speculate.
Personally, though, I hope they live forever. I love movies. I'm going to go watch. I haven't been to the movie theater since COVID. I'm going to go watch Dune when it comes out in November. I wasn't 100% sold on the first one, but I want to give it a chance. I want to give part 2 a chance. I want to see it in the big screen. And I think it is one of those movies where you can't really judge a special effects movie you know, and to Matt's point, the Kurosawa film where the scope of it cannot be fully grasped on a small screen. I think there are some things, just as 8 episodes, there are things that a movie cannot compete with a well-written serial. There are things that a movie on the big screen that nothing can compete with that. And so for my portions, I don't know what's going to happen. I understand kind of what's happening, good and bad for movies, but I really do hope that the theater experience is there for people who want it in years to come. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way about drive-ins.
Yeah.
They've not disappeared, even though there's a lot less of them. Matt, you remember when you came to have lunch with me, that driving past that huge drive-in that's about 20 minutes from my house.
Okay, so the thing about drive-in movies when I was a kid, if it wasn't kung fu movies, it was movies about girls taking off their tops. And so
That's what drive-ins were about.
that's what drive-in movies were for, you know, is they're all third run movies or they were kung fu movies. And the reason I well know this is we had this routine where like 4 of us would hide in my friend's trunk.
You know, I knew you were going to say that for some reason.
Okay, well, that's an experience that my kids are never going to have. Like,
Good point.
3 other buddies stuffed in a trunk, 2 in the car, and you get in the movie theater, 5 for the price of 2.
One
And
ticket,
you
please.
watch some girl take her top off. I mean, it was worth it.
It was worth it. Oh man, Laird and I are talking about the majesty of theaters and everything, and Matt's like, you know, she took her top off. That's why I went.
And Matt's busy getting Lovecraft Easing banned and canceled
Right.
everywhere. Yes.
Right. Don't listen to that podcast, sexist asshole.
Hey, I mean, I was like, what? 14, 15,
Yeah, I'm kidding.
and it's like,
Every 14-year-old
what?
kid has that thought.
Okay, this is before you had you didn't have YouPorn in the privacy of your own living room or bedroom or whatever. It's like, but this is what we did for fun in high school. You get a 6-pack of beer for 4 people, and it's wow, this is the best time ever. Well, the thing is, when I went to visit you in Corsicana, did you offer to sneak me in your trunk into the movie theater at the
Hell
drive-in?
no.
No.
But I would have put you in my trunk if you'd asked.
Right.
So maybe not to go to the movie theater. Well, anyway, thanks for being here, Laird. Talking about the
Yeah.
anthology and prognosticating on movie theaters. So,
Yeah. I'm glad to be here.
prize, Matt.
A reminder, if you want this part of the White Ash Saga Glarian, the first issue, send an email to easingprizes@gmail.com, put Glarian in the subject heading. We're going to draw a winner in about 6 weeks.
And just remember that the opinions and thoughts of the panelists are not necessarily the opinions and thoughts of the host.
They're all
Of
pre-approved by Mike Davis.
Can I mention one thing?
Please, yes.
I just want to say the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. blew me
Oh,
away.
sure.
If you're a Star Trek fan, it was fantastic.
It was really good. Episode 3, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
We've
What's
just
called
seen episode
tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Besides totally making a major change to the continuity of the whole franchise, it worked as a great love story.
What's a change, or do I need to watch it?
I don't want to reveal that.
Okay. Okay. I'll make sure
need
that
to
I watch
watch
it
it.
this weekend.
Oh,
Well, everyone was saying the first episode of this season was bad, but if you get
I
past
liked it.
that,
First episode was okay. Wasn't
I liked it.
Pete and I
I
didn't
think
like
the
it.
second was excellent. The third was
That's
fantastic.
the thing. What it promised, that first episode promised we're going to get more Gorn.
Yeah.
Well, that's what matters.
But what it sort of happened, and it becomes, I'm going to allude to a little bit when you find out the third episode. There's all these time wars and guys swapping things. The timeline can never be exactly what it was.
Oh, yeah.
But due to some creative interference by the good guys, and possibly the timeline itself correcting itself, you end up with some of the same basic results.
There in the Star Trek books, I was able to buy a couple of them on sale for Kindle recently. There's a I don't know what you want to call it, a branch of Star Trek of the Federation called the Department of Temporal Investigations.
They had something like that in this one.
Oh, okay. I'm definitely gonna have to watch it. You guys know how I feel about time travel.
Yeah, it may have been that name. It was the name they used on Voyager when they had the 7 of 9, that Traveling Through Time episode.
Okay. All right. Well, the last thing I'll say is I don't think that John Langan watches these unless he's actually in it. And then he'll probably the following week watch it at least twice a day. But that's just my guess. I don't know for sure. But you know, I tweeted about what was it I tweeted about the other day that John was in the tweet too. Anyway, I said, and you know, oh no, I know what it was. It was 3 years ago, Stephen Graham Jones and Paul Tremblay. I was saying, you know, three years ago, we had a episode with these guys, you know, together in one episode, definitely worth a listen. And John was there too. And I said, you know, formerly the host of Bassmaster, since he keeps writing books about fishing. And he didn't take the bait. He didn't say a word.
Didn't take the bait.
Didn't take the bait.
See what I did there?
He didn't take the bait.
He clicked the like button and he's just like above the fray. It's really no fun making fun of somebody when they won't engage.
And look, this is after I am certain, okay, this is a nod from Barron to Langan. There's a place called The Fisherman, I think an inn in this latest Isaiah Coleridge.
It might be. It might be.
Yeah.
That book's so great. Everyone's got to go read it.
I think Matt liked your latest book, Laird.
I appreciate it.
Oh, so many little references and Easter eggs and things about film and things about music and oh, it's great.
I wrote that. I was getting really sick when I wrote it. And I didn't know what was wrong at the time. I just was sick and was worried about being able to deliver it to the publisher, to Bad Hand, Doug Monroe. And I just, Moreno, and I'm kind of like really grateful I got it done. And then of course everything really fell apart after that. But then everybody got together and pre-ordered it, and it's been extremely successful, and it means there'll be more. So, but I do appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, so to the audience, if you have not yet read it, it's available in print and Kindle. The Wind Began to Howl by Laird Barron. And again, you don't have to have read the first 3 books, but you can read them later, or you can read the 4th book without having read the first 3, is what I mean to say.
But the best thing is to get all 3 of the other ones and read them.
Right, exactly. So
People jump in different places in the series now. People who've started with this one and then read. I've talked to people who started with the middle one. Yeah, it's always, you know, the most reward starting at the beginning, but you can jump in anywhere. So, and the only other thing I'll say is I do endorse this. You know, I mean, I have a story in this anthology back to OMNIPARK. I think it's going to be a blast. There's really good authors that they've signed, and it was, you know, I've been part of a lot of anthologies, and I've only done a handful of anthologies that were sort of like in someone else's sandbox, like Joe Lansdale's drive-in theater. I did a story for that's coming out, and this was one of the most fun stories that I've, you know, I really enjoyed myself. You know, that one in the Lansdale, I really had a lot of fun doing something set in somebody else's world. And so this is a really fascinating, the whole theme park thing OMNIPARK is really fascinating. So I hope that they get lots of support and they can do a 3rd one.
yeah, and it's very original, and you know, not that there have been many, for example, ghost anthologies or haunted house anthologies or cosmic horror anthologies, you name it. There have been many of those, and they've been a lot of them are very good. Some aren't, but a lot are very good. But that said, this is a unique idea. It's a unique little playground sandbox. So should be a lot of fun to read.
I think it will be. I think it, just judging from people I've talked to and the people they have lined up already. So yeah, support it.
Yeah, so please make it happen, folks. I'll have the link in the show notes, as well as a link to Laird's book if you don't have it yet. And we will see everybody next week. Thanks for listening.